So yesterday was a joint effort with my partner Mazi.
Okay.
The workshop was called Practical Frameworks for Ethical Design.
Okay.
It's really broadening the thinking of for designers to promote critical thinking and awareness, not only for the design teams but for stakeholders. Really, we've been moved towards this whole notion of speed to market the past few years with books of with the lean movement and sprints, but then we're kind of losing that sight of thinking more broad, or what are the actually unintended consequences of the work that we're doing. If you look at companies right now, designers typically work 1-2 years and they'll switch to another company.
Yeah, yeah, we
But
have a lots of change in the industry. We can keep the designer for the one for an employer.
yeah,
It's really hard.
that itself is an issue. But if you look at companies previously to that,
Yeah.
like Braun, for instance,
Yeah.
their designers would stay there for years, so they could actually see how their products are influencing
Yeah.
and living in their own and having other impacts. So when you're designing a piece, it's very intentional. You're like,
Yeah.
this is a problem I want to solve. I'm going to use these methods. I'm going to come with the product. But once you put the product in the world, it has all these emergent qualities that starts working with it, and it can find completely different spheres. So, so when we think about, we create solutions, but the
Yeah.
solution creates other problems that we
Yeah.
didn't think about, and
Yeah.
those solutions might create other problems that we didn't think. So those are the unintended consequence. So we created a framework, a practical framework, because my area is practice, mine is more theoretical, and
Okay.
I work at the agency called Klick,
Okay.
which is a healthcare agency in Toronto, and we work with large biotech and pharmaceutical companies in U.S. and global. And knowing the constraints we have, we really want to make sure that the work we're bringing in, it's manageable. So in a
Yeah.
2-hour work session, you can really influence people to think about, this is our attention, but these
Yeah.
are the other unintended consequences that can happen. Either we can look at those as opportunities
Yeah.
or risks, be aware of it, or either change your designs or change your products or services to mitigate those risks, right?
Okay.
And
Because we have a responsibility, because we are designer and we put new things in the world, we have the responsibility to think about those questions.
yeah, and not necessarily in your business niche. Think about it from a social impact. Think about a technological impact, environmental impact, economical.
Yeah.
And then the notion why we call it ethical frameworks is because the term ethics
Yeah.
is it's a very tough term to determine, because every person will have their own ethics, and ethics it's transient, it changes, it's negotiable.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to put it down. But that being a designer or being part of
Yeah.
the company, it's part of the way you think and part of the way you do your work, that you have to think broader than what we're trying to do.
And you're talking about difference between ethics between two different persons, but it's also about culture, about where we are going to put the project. If I'm doing a project like for Canada or for worldwide, it's not the same thing. I have to think about the different, kind of values that everybody have, depends on where they are. So how can you address that?
So we were using a tool called Futures Wheel.
Yeah.
It's been there, and it was developed in the 70s, but prior to that, the way we modified it to make it
Yeah.
to understand the current design processes and create it as a component that's easy enough to make a case to do it. So it's like a
Okay.
2-hour work session versus like 2 days. 2 days
Yeah.
is very hard for private sector companies to say we're going to spend that much money and bring everyone into it. But once you bring that in, and what happens is it creates awareness. So as a team, you can see from, for instance, if we look at, in our example, we use cannabis legalization.
Okay.
And we use unlimited holidays. So if your company says unlimited holidays, what are the direct impacts of that?
Yes.
What are the second order, the third order? So you might have started with, people might be happier, but they might
Yeah.
end up, it will cause a lot of, people won't actually take holidays because they don't know what's the limit.
Yes.
So, and it might create friction and whatnot, but those were not intended. Those are the
Yeah.
unintended works. So you can think broadly, not only from your company, but other areas that it might cause from the whole value of how do we look at work? Is it
Yeah.
9 to 5? Is it a different structure? And the impacts that it could have, because end of the day, whatever you put out as your work, you you're putting that out because you think that would make the world better. And you can't really design the other elements that go out, but you can design with an understanding what are the possibilities of those that could happen in the future timeline. Either be aware of it, and either you can say, it's least likely, or it's not a risk, or it's a high risk that we want to think about. Like an example that we used was Facebook. So Facebook really started with the whole notion of connecting people, right? And then if you look at their mission statement every year, they add more stuff to it. Like now, security is a big thing. Their members' data privacy is a big thing. And what happened, a year ago or whatnot, that their stock evaluation dropped $120 billion in one day, which is the most, which is the highest that's ever happened in any history of a stock market for any company. $120 billion in one day of loss. Their valuation fell down because of what happened previously. So I think that's a great case to make for businesses to think
clearly.
more. Whether if they would do this activity, they could have mitigated, I don't know. But it would be another tool that helps teams, not designers. What we want to promote is everyone in the room has a stake, but provides awareness. That's your first step.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you had a very specific example, like a few minutes ago, about cannabis legalization. Do you have something that you faced that you had to think about that kind of question?
Yeah, the reason why we put cannabis legalization, because we think it's very contextually relevant today in Canada, because it's recently being legalized. And knowing that this is a workshop conference format, we wanted to put something that everyone will have their opinions about it. It's already in our minds. It's not something very specific that's going to be hard, because we don't know the members or participants that are coming to this workshop and what fields or agencies or what type of work they do. But cannabis is something that we had 20 of them. We brought this down to 2 things that could be more interesting. Either you might be very against it or positive, but that's also good to know. It's good to have dialogue about that.
And talking about dialogue, before the interview, you said that you have another patient about UX.
One of my passions is cocktails. So I always ask my question, if I wouldn't do what I would do now, is I would create this very small 6-person cocktail bar that would run. I think it's beautiful. It's an experience that provides you. It's theater. You talk. You connect with them. You see the satisfaction. You see their feedback right after that. You select the right mixture of flavors. So it has smell. It has flavor. It has temperature, music, light. And then the way that
all of the sense,
all the senses, you're playing with that, your personality, knowing about them, it creates a place that people can connect, and that's one of the things that we do as designers. We try to connect with our users. I think that's why, and it really creates a interesting memory too. So the idea of we created that memory, that scent, that smell, that you took them back somewhere in their
so more than a cocktail, it's a total experience of having a memory, having using those past experience and put it in a glass.
In a glass, and it's temporal. After 30 minutes, you're done. You move to the next experience. So it's not long term. It provides that you can do it with friends, and it keeps changing. So then I know when I talk about it, everyone's smiles goes up and is like, what do you make? And they get excited. And that for me is, it provides you energy, and it really gives you that. So maybe a few years from down, you might come to a cocktail bar in Montreal.
But in another interview, we were talking about how create a space when people will be comfortable for having a workshop. I'm not saying the solution is to bring alcohol to the workshop, but it's kind of the same thing that we want to do, create a safe space when people will be able to exchange about what they thought, about the experience and everything. So you are you are kind of thinking about the same problem or the same things for a workshop than for your cocktail experience.
Yeah. I think it comes back because I used to be an architect and work in that field.
Yeah.
And trained as one. So I think it's using also that background and understanding space and whatnot. Because in architecture, you do that. You do service design and in a different format, in a much larger context. And it's something that's, because right now I work mostly in the digital field, which is much more temporal, but in architecture it stays for longer. Cultures can change, but buildings will stay. You have, so I think with also having that in mind, it's really important, and as what you mentioned earlier, of creating a space that enables people to feel safe, enables people to experience things more than what they can. So in a lot of the workshops, I always try to, have one or two jokes, do things that might, say, it's okay. I know everyone's trying to connect with people, but sometimes put the guards down, especially when you don't know anyone. You just came to a room, there's 90 new faces, maybe some old, maybe some new, but how can you instantly start generating connection with them? And
especially if you're an introvert or not an extrovert person, it's going to be maybe harder, because an extrovert person have this, these kinds of qualities that pays to connect with people that maybe an introvert person will have more difficulties to do. And creating that kind of space can just help those people to, calm and be more able to do what the workshop is about.
Yeah, and I think one of the key features of great facilitators and service designers is EQ, environmental, so knowing what's around them, how people are reacting, those small triggers, if they're looking, if they're going in, being very conscious of that and enabling those conversations, enabling them to feel more confident, safe in that space. So I think that's a really key, and I've seen great presenters today and workshops of other colleagues that I'm extremely honored of being there and learning from them too.